Hello and welcome to the Bones Horror Podcast. This is episode 76, A Quiet Place 2, which is a sequel to A Quiet Place. Tonight we have with us Jess.
Hello.
Larry.
Hello.
And Ewan.
Hello.
Going live on YouTube and the usual podcast. So, right. This week, what have we been up to? I have been doing a fair bit of work. Family's just left me and gone to Norfolk, which is about 4 hours from my house. So I'm home alone. So yeah, tonight should be no hassles, no kids using all the internet. So it should be nice and quiet, at least till tomorrow anyway. You guys, Jess, I know we didn't see you last week, did we?
Yeah. Working. Mainly socializing.
Wow,
went to a
socializing.
wedding on Friday, and then a birthday last night. So
busy.
Yeah.
You did manage to watch film.
Yes.
Excellent, Larry.
Yeah, no, all good. I think mainly with just film watching this week. Haven't done too much like filming or anything. That probably be kicking off again in summer.
Brilliant. Ewan, been to the cinema?
Yeah, been a few times, which I'll talk about later. But I also had another D&D session.
Nice.
The second one I've had. It's quite interesting because because obviously I think I only go for all the sort of like improvised theatre of it all, and I mean obviously and socializing as well. But I like the sort of I like sort of taking the piss, but not really, kind of on that edge. Because luckily it's not taken too seriously these sessions. But I'm just all here for like being the sort of the bard at the edge of the actual like fellowship company, where I'm just like there just to like sing a song or give encouragement. So occasionally I just pop up and just go, "You can do it, guys!" And I was like, "Yeah,
wow,
so I'm well suited to that, I think."
That's good.
Well, yeah. Well, so not too bad. Are we doing a podcast next weekend? We'll have to see about that. Easter weekend.
Yeah, let's see about that.
Yeah, I'll double check.
Yeah, it might be a bit tricky that one, but let's see. So let's move on to A Quiet Place 2, which was my pick. Right, so I actually brought something. Following the deadly events at home, the Abbott family must now face the terrors of the outside world as they continue their fight for survival in silence. So I can read what I'm saying, guys. If you're listening to the podcast, I've read that on my screen. It's amazing. Yeah, so pretty much, I loved the first one. I think I went to the cinema. Me and my son, my oldest, Ollie, we went to the cinema to see it. And it was great. It's only an hour and a half, isn't it?
Well, the first one was. I think this one was. The second one's like an hour 40, I think.
It was, yeah, but it's just right, really. Yeah, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it, really. It's yeah, I've got the 4K version as well, which looked really nice, to be honest. Yeah, and it's just, I could watch this once a year, I expect. Maybe not, maybe 2 years, but it's a good, decent film. So, can you explain? I know Ewan loves to explain what this is actually about. I could stumble through it, but yeah, I can try and explain.
Well,
yeah,
no,
go on.
You sure?
Go
okay.
on, go on, Ewan. Go on. Ewan.
Okay. So part 2, pretty much sort of minutes or maybe late, even an hour set after the first film, where John Krasinski sadly dies. So the father of this family, the Abbott family, who have learned to survive in this post-apocalyptic situation. It's only just become post-apocalyptic, so it's I think in part 2 it's day 474, so it's just over a year since the big day, since the big apocalypse day happened, which you actually see as the prologue to this film, which I think was a good opener, because I'll be honest, I wasn't as sold on the first one as a lot of other people were. Maybe because it was overhyped, because it came out and everyone was going mad for it. It, busted the box office. It got so many great critical reviews, and I thought, oh, I should probably see this. And then I saw it, and I was like, I like it, but it's not. To me, it's not as revolutionary as people were saying it was. And I like the problem I had with the first one is that I felt it was too limited in its scope, which is obviously the point, because I think John Krasinski wanted it to be an intimate family drama, essentially. But I think all the trailers for the first film were pretty much like, it inferred that it was a road movie and that we'd be traveling through this world and seeing what it's like and stuff, but really it's not. It as the title suggests, it's just them being in a quiet place, which is a place they found, which is quiet and away from the away from the alien monsters.
They keep making noise though.
Yeah.
So I missed out a little chunk at the beginning, really, that I like to do. So it was directed by John. How do you say his name? Krasinski.
I don't know if it's either Krasinski or Krasinski.
Yeah. Krasinski.
Krasinski.
So it starred Emily Blunt as Evelyn or Evelyn. Is it Evelyn or Evelyn? There you go. I can't remember. Abbott. She was in Edge of Tomorrow, because I like that film a lot.
Yeah, that is a good film.
Tommy Shelby starred as Emmett, who was a friend of Lee's, the character that died. And Lee Abbott is in it at the beginning, the John Krasinski character. The budget is 61 million and a box office of 297 million and a Rotten Tomato scores of what do you think?
71, maybe something like that. 72, just because I know the first one. I thought that one is it actually higher? Okay,
Yeah.
Is it?
90. No, I'd say 8. Oh no, 95.
Just registering.
Yeah, let's just say no. Well, yeah,
Higher than 90. Higher than 90.
This is like what mentalists do, when they're trying to ascertain what.
Am I a mentalist?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense of like a psychic, not like a. Yeah, I'll probably go in the 70s as well, actually.
Yeah, 91. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if that was a bit as well. I was like, is it going to be 70 something? It was like, no, 91.
Brilliant.
Oh dear. Sorry, Ewan. So I've done my bit now. I like to do that little introduction to the film that I've done for 76 episodes now. And I forgot to do it. So it all starts at that Little League game, which is kind of like baseball, I suppose, and there's some kind of object in the sky comes down, and from that, what are those things?
Sort of alien.
What are they?
Blind
called?
alien things.
Blind mole rats.
Who can only. Sorry, Dan's just commented saying, due to current events, I chose to watch Slapface this week. Brilliant.
Dan, I watched Spiral after I Am Legend last week. So it's the current events. We are very current on this podcast.
Yeah.
Slapface, I actually watched. Which did you guys watch that? Did you watch that, Larry?
I don't think.
I think it was on Shudder.
Yeah, because I used to have Shudder.
It's a very good film, but it's again, I'm confused by it, so I need to go through that with you because I don't know what's real and what's not. It's one of them. Definitely worth a visit, though. So anyway, let's go back to this film.
So
we'll talk about Slapface later, Dan.
So the opening kind of expands the world a bit. and sort of sees how it all started. So it's like, so the whole Abbott family are at a little league game, as you said, and the anxious middle child, can't remember his name now, but he's doing the batting.
Annoying, very annoying.
He is a very annoying child, especially
Yeah.
in this film, I think.
I honestly didn't remember him being in the films. I saw him,
Really?
I was like, did he die? Because I don't remember him. And then
I wish
heard
he
him,
had
it's just like,
died.
oh,
No, it was the
I
little
have
one died, didn't he?
No memory of him whatsoever from the first film.
Well, that's the interesting thing about him in this film, because he's sort of like, I don't know, I think they try and think of things for him to do, and I'm not sure if it totally pays off, but anyway, so Earth gets invaded by these monsters who are blind, but they've got ultrasonic hearing, and they attack towards any sound they hear. And, it's a good opener. It's big set piece action opener, quite fun, quite enjoyable, and then it flashes forward back to day 474, where the Abbott family are leaving their quiet place to go to another place, sort of led by Millicent Simmons' character, who is pretty much the hero of this
She's very
film.
good. Yeah,
she is very good, and I think it's this film's best asset. I think is her character, because she's sort of like, I mean, it's a very different sort of character to what other heroes before. I mean, just the fact that she's deaf is just sort of, and I think also, as much as I'm ambivalent about the first film, I feel like her character, you were saying something similar, I think, last week, Lawrence, about her character being great, but it's sort of like, I feel like it's kind of, she sort of broke a barrier for other films and TV shows to feature deaf characters, and I think that's why it's often, we see far more deaf characters now on TV and movies. But she's sort of like, she's a badass hero in this, I think.
Yeah.
And she's sort of like still sort of grieving over death of a father. And so the Abbott family kind of leave their quiet place and come across this sort of, I don't know what you call it, it's like a refinery or something, like
a factory place.
like something from Rust, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the game, it's an old industrial place, rusty old place.
Yeah, and then they find Cillian Murphy, who is sort of Cillian Murphy, Tommy Shelby.
Oh right, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to confuse anyone, do we, on this podcast?
And he's living by himself. He's been living by himself since his wife died 11 weeks prior. The kids died on day one, I think. And he's been sort of like been very wary of other people, because he's again, expanding the world a bit. He sort of talks about how he's been in contact with a sort of other sort of like, it seems like the world has been split into tribes, like it's gone back to that kind of dynamic, and he sort of has examined the sort of depravity of humanity, and the same, it sort of follows the same sort of tropes as a lot of other post-apocalyptic movies, and so this has become their new quiet place. But Millicent Simmons' character from the first film has discovered that she can weaken the monsters with her, I'm not quite sure what you call it, a sort of hearing aid thing, and holding that up to a microphone.
Yeah, it's the frequency, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah.
Anyway, she found that the frequency was quite annoying to them. It doesn't kill him, does it? But it certainly pushes them back.
Yeah, it makes their heads pop up.
Yeah,
and you can sort of shoot it. It's very like a video game in many ways. I mean, but both these movies, I mean, a lot of especially a lot of this one, it reminded me a lot of Last of Us, and in many ways I kind of wish it was more like Last of Us, because it was sort of, I mean, it's the interesting thing about this film is that when I watched it the first time, I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars for Culture Whisper. I watched it on I think it was an IMAX screen, so I was getting the full experience. And I think with this film in particular, it's wise to watch it at the cinema, because you get the full impact of what you're going for, just the quietness and everything like that. And the key USP of this film is that everyone's quiet at the cinema. I mean, maybe get some people eating popcorn, but other than that, you're required to stay silent, because because that's
Not
what
like
the
a
characters
Marvel.
have to do.
Not
No,
like a
not like a
Marvel
Marvel
film.
film.
No,
No,
no.
not at all. But watching it again, I feel like I had similar feelings that I did to the first one, actually, because even though they expand this world, and I quite enjoyed that, I feel like I don't care about a lot of the characters, or at least I don't care as much as they're wanting me to. I think the only person I care about is Millicent Simmonds' character, but but as we said earlier, the boy, I can't remember his name, but Noah Jupe's character is just. I mean, he's a good actor, and he knows how to play anxiety. He was also in, I think it was in the David E. Kelly drama, The Undoing, where he plays quite a similar role, where he just, it's clearly like John Krasinski just goes, look anxious. And he's like, he manages to do it very effectively. But he doesn't do much in this film.
He just ignored me. Like I was on the same kind of level as Hereditary with that boy squealing and crying all the time. I was getting the same kind of feeling. You know, I'd probably cry and scream a bit if a bear trap went through my ankle, or whatever. To be honest, but he was just bloody annoying.
Yeah. And
yeah.
there was also a moment where, I mean, when that bear trap gets him, it kind of disables him throughout the whole film. And but there was a bit where basically, in order to avoid the monsters, they go underground in this sort of subterranean cave, and they're able to escape them like down a ladder. But what confused me was that even though the boy had like a disabled leg, he was still able to climb the ladder. And sort of like when his mum goes off, it's like, well, where are you going? Where are you going? And then instead of stay downstairs after everyone had gone, it was just him and the baby. He says, "Oh, I'll just go exploring for a little bit. Don't care, you know. I'll just leave the baby on its own."
All the anxiety went away.
Yeah. And I get why they did that. I mean, the reason they did that is to offer a bit of backstory to Cillian Murphy's character, because the boy goes upstairs, sees the dead mum, sort of Psycho style, just or the dead wife, whatever, in the bed, and that offers some like background to Cillian Murphy's character, but it feels like they took a shortcut in the script where they were just like, well, we need him to go out in order to figure this stuff out, but it just didn't really settle well with me.
Cillian Murphy, listeners, is Tommy Shelby.
They know that. They'll know that.
I don't think anyone who's listened from episode 1 won't know that.
Well, we did do 28 Days Later a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
I was gonna say.
That had Tommy Shelby in as well.
But that's another thing. Actually, I did
mixes
really
it up a bit, doesn't he?
I did really like
everywhere.
And I did really like Cillian Murphy's character and him.
Yeah, he was very good.
I think that's the interesting thing about Murphy in general, is that he seems to do a different sort of performance with every role he does. I mean, I suppose the best known role is as Tommy Shelby, as you said. But this character, even though it's still this character is still filled with trauma and distrust and sort of almost waiting for death, you can still see he's a different character to Tommy Shelby, and I think that's testament to Murphy's character. Danzo said, "I scream when arm hairs get stuck in my wristwatch. Bear trap, I'd be dead." Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat.
I'd be very surprised if anybody had a bear trap and just like kind of breezed it off, just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have bears, do we? I bet
many.
in Sweden they have bears. I bet they do in Sweden. Some kind of bear, polar bears, maybe. I don't know. Yogi
Polar
bear.
Yogi.
We don't have panda bears. But,
I mean, barely anywhere has panda bears.
but they're near Russia, aren't they? So they're bound to have bears.
Near-ish. I mean, they're nearer than us, I guess. But
Wow.
Panda bears.
Let's ask Jess what she thought. So we haven't given away total spoilers on this film. What happens at the end yet? But is this your first watch, Jess, or second, or first watch?
Yeah.
And did you pay for it?
Watch it for a while. No. So I spent ages trying to find somewhere to watch it.
Yeah.
And the only place I could get it was by getting a free trial of Now Cinema. So
Yeah,
Need to
that's
cancel that
that's on there.
soon.
Yeah, cancel it straight away. I think you can do it straight away. That's what.
Cancel.
Yeah, because
It is on
Yeah,
Internet
like-
Plus, I think.
oh
Probably
yeah,
on.
yeah. Because I wanted to watch it on the telly, so. But
Okay.
yeah, otherwise it was like you couldn't rent it anywhere. It was buy only, so it was like $7.99.
That's
like,
why I got it
oh,
on Blu-ray. I
right.
just thought, fuck it.
Yeah. But no, I really liked it. It did feel, obviously, without going into anything just yet with the ending, it didn't feel like overly a lot happened. But yeah, I still really good, really good. I think the kids were great at the end, especially. I got a lot of like Stranger Things vibes. I mean, not just because they do kind of just look like Demogorgons, but the lighting and everything just was great, especially with like the whole radio, like live. Really good. But, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you won. You only watched it a few hours ago, didn't you? So you
Yeah,
done
I
well
watched it and
there.
had lunch. Yeah,
Yeah, you done well there.
good.
Larry, come on.
I
Is
like
it all down to interpretation, or not?
I like these films. I'm not the biggest fan of them. That's not for any other reason than just because the first one came out at a really weird time where, like, I think very close to it, or at least a few months before or after, Bird Box that came out around the same time.
I think Bird Box came out later.
Originally,
Yeah, and
That's
it
why
like
it was like on Netflix or something. But yeah,
and it was like, oh, this one's about sound, and then this one's about visuals. And then they did that other one that was on Netflix, The Silence, which was like,
yeah, I
oh,
think I came out next.
I
year.
think
And-
The Silence was written first.
possibly.
And I definitely read Bird Box, or Birdcage, whatever it's called. I get confused.
Birdcage.
Bird Box. So I've definitely read both of those, but then I don't think there is a book. There might be A Quiet Place. I don't know, but I've definitely read The Silence, which isn't as good as A Quiet Place, but I liked some of the ideas in The Silence quite a bit actually.
Yeah, I just
and the monsters. There's lots of them.
That's the thing. Like I think that is my biggest issue with A Quiet Place. It's just a personal one because I think the films are actually very good, very well made, really likable characters. But for me, I get a bit bored when there's like a creature that's kind of like, I don't know how to put it, but for instance, we mentioned Stranger Things, and I think that Demogorgon is quite good because throughout each season, it's like evolves in some way. You know, you've got different types of creatures, or it's trying to take over people and trick them.
That
and,
reminds me of Tremors with the arse blasters and how they all kind of evolve 3 or 4 times, don't they?
Well, yeah.
Like I like that in Tremors. They start off as like the worm thing, and then they turn into an arse blaster, and then there's something else.
Yeah,
Have you seen those films, guys? Have you seen?
Yeah.
All the
I
Tremors?
think I saw it ages and ages ago. Is that Cronenberg?
No, definitely not.
Is it not?
Tremors.
Or am I thinking of
Tremors.
Shivers?
It's got Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon and
Kevin Bacon. No,
But there's about 6 of them.
Yeah, there's the first one was like just had the premise of there were like the worms, and there was like a bigger worm, I think, and throughout each film they evolved or added new things. Like I think there's one where they can like walk on the ground with legs.
I don't think I've seen it.
No, but this is the thing with the Quiet Place too. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the opening especially, I think that's really well done, and you can tell with the second one that John.
I think it's Krasinski.
Yeah, you can tell that he's obviously feels a lot more confident because I think A Quiet Place was his first film.
I don't think it was his first one, but it was for a big horror film.
Yeah, and I think that I think he's going to do a third part, isn't he? I think they've said that already.
I expect so. I mean, it was weird because it was like after the first one did really well. Apparently John Krasinski didn't want to do a second one. He never intended to do a second one. But but I don't know. I slightly mistrust that because I feel like the first one did end on a cliffhanger, and that might have been the producers who said, make sure this film has returnability to it. I don't know, but it was like, I don't know. It was sort of, and then for some reason, and then he was like, well, get someone else to do Quiet Place 2. and then he just wrote and directed the whole thing, which I don't think he didn't do it solely. He didn't write the first one script solely by himself. I think he wrote it with 2 other people, but in this one, it was completely him, just written and directed. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that they are good films, and I do enjoy them. But are they ones that like I'd go back to a lot? Like I've seen each one of them once, and for me, I'm like, cool. If there's a third one, I'll see that, and hopefully it has like, if it's going to be like a roundup of a trilogy, or if they're just going to do another one. But yeah, no, it is decent. I think it's well done as well, and I think as from seeing obviously on the video for people watching it visually, there are some really, like as you said before, just as well. The lighting's really good, the shots, the cinematography is really good, and obviously the acting, because I think Emily Blunt as well she's a very good, emotional actor. I think she can convey that very well. Again, another reason why I really like Edge of Tomorrow, because I think that film as well could just be another action throwaway, but I think the characters in that make it what it is. So yeah, I'd say it's good. They are good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It was like as I was watching it, I was like, yeah, this is really good. This is really good, but I'm not really that emotionally invested in what I'm watching. And I think
that's exactly what. Because they're good. You can acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, I just am not here. Like, whoa, I got to see the next one. I'm like, cool.
And I feel like as I was watching it, I was like, and this is critics shouldn't do this, because it should be like you should be criticizing what is happening on screen rather than what you would have preferred to have seen.
Yeah.
But in my view, I think there are certain moments where they could have like leaned into it a bit more. Like it kind of annoyed me when it was when they followed Millicent Simmons' character. Great scenes, but I feel like that if it was. I feel like it would have been more daring if they just had it completely silent with her, because you could see where it drifts from silence to sound in order to sort of, and it reminds me of those times you see in sort of movies, usually war movies, where let's say Germans, they're speaking in German 1 minute, and then the camera moves like past their head and they're speaking suddenly in English, because it's like, we'll put up with German for a bit, no, but we'll go for full English. We just want English, and it felt almost like that, where it was just like, okay, we're going to have soundness for a bit, but we'll we'll make it accessible for everyone. We just don't focus on this stuff character, but those scenes where it is just silenced, and following her are just so effective, and I feel like it would have been even more effective if you had those moments longer, especially when you've also got like the sort of like booming soundtrack as well. I feel like a lot of those music cues were a bit superfluous, but as you say, Lawrence, it was sort of I did enjoy it, but again, I wasn't heavily invested in it.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't interested that much in the characters at all. I was more interested in how these alien things, whatever they were breeding. What were they doing there? What was the point of them? Why are they just wiping out everyone? Is it just literally, are they eating them, or are they just destroying them? That's kind of where my head was all the time while watching this at the cinema. I thought I was going to get a little bit more. Maybe they had a breeding ground. Maybe there was these asteroids landing, or whatever they were, all over the world. Was that right? Was the whole world was kind of taken over? Unless you're a little island, because these things can't seem to swim. Though one stowed away on the boat, didn't
they can travel off by boat.
This is what I want to know. Did the boat just happen to drift there, or was he like paddling? Like, I want to see that part.
Well, his little armbands on. You know what I mean?
Just,
it was at the wheel. It was at the wheel.
Yeah.
It was just...
you figure out how to drive it. Just
It's with David Lynch on the boat. Like, we're going into the night. Like, hop in, I'll give you a lift.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for in this third one. Like whether we get a bit more background to them, or literally they're just going to play a massive speaker across the world and kind of play these frequencies and destroy them. But what's to stop others coming?
Well, Larry mentioned evolution, and if you look at when she's on like the train carriage, there's that huge hole in the side of it, and the other train carriage was wrecked. And I thought at that point we were going to see something a lot bigger.
Yeah.
We didn't. So now I'm like, Is that
I think
in the
there
future?
must be. But are these things
'Cause-
just like dogs? You've set them on. There's someone in outer space, a lot bigger, a
Well, I
lot
thought it was going to
stronger.
happen after that scene when
Mm.
they run into the cabin. It sounded like something bigger was coming,
Yeah.
and then it wasn't. So I was quite disappointed at that.
No, I get that. It's yeah, we wanted a bit more. That's why maybe it should have only done one and just let us. That is it. No, it was down to interpretation. So yeah, it's literally that. But now we're probably going to get a third one because it generates money. It's making 5 times what it cost.
But I think that's what's interesting because I mean, this might be a bit snobby for me, but I'm just sort of because I reckon if this was made even like 10 years ago, I'd have liked it a lot more. But because in the last 10 years we've had such amazing horror movies come out, or horror movies that at least like push the boat out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I'm watching this, and the only thing this film has as its sort of USP is the silence, which is done very well. But I feel like that's really what's going for it. I don't know.
This might be like really stupid to say, but like the thing that gets me is that in a film about these creatures who need silence, they don't seem to care at that beginning bit when they're running around with cars and stuff going like burp, burp,
Yeah.
they're just like, and so it's little things like that where I have to stretch in my head the premise and think, okay, did the world really not guess that sound is the weakness?
Yeah. It was also like, I mean, I just don't know. I suppose like the point of the film is that it has that kind of intimacy angle about it, where it's like not like people don't really know what's going on, and it's about that kind of conflict, I guess. But I feel like I don't know. I just wanted more from the world, and I felt like as I was watching it, I felt like it wasn't a case of like this world has been well built and it's mysterious. I feel like it was underwritten and they just put a mystery angle on it, if you know what I mean. So it just felt like they were sort of walking into empty space almost.
So these aliens that are blind, that can make spaceships or they can travel. It must be very difficult being blind to be able to do all these things.
Well, I wonder if there are more evolved.
Yeah,
beings
it's got to be, isn't it? So it's just the beginning of the end of the world, basically. Because if these things are that powerful, it's game over, isn't it? Really? We might have a little frequency that kills them, but that's it. Anyway, I shouldn't think too much, really.
But that's one part of the film that, like, I think for me is lowered, is that you're meant to think, okay, like maybe they've just by accident landed here, and but I don't know. No. Hopefully it'll get explained.
So shall we rate it? And so we move on to the next. I know Jessie's got to be in bed by midnight, so we got to get on with this. I'm going to give it 7. I like it a lot, but I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it doesn't make sense. It looks spectacular at times. The acting's good. I think the aliens look good, whatever they are. But I'm going to give it a 7 because I want to know more, and it doesn't explain itself that well. And it is quite a basic storyline, isn't it? Really, there's not much to it. So for me, a 7. Jess?
I'm torn between a 7 and an 8. I'll probably go for an 8. Probably would have gone higher if more had happened, or if they kind of gave us more. But hopefully the next one will do that. So.
Wow, yeah, hopefully. Larry?
I'm stuck. I'm gonna
Larry
say
lost for words.
I'm gonna say, and again, it's only not because I don't think it's a good film, but just because of my personal score. But I'd say a solid 6 for me. But I think,
Six.
but I do think that's not because the films like. It's not because it's bad or anything. I think it's they're both very well made films, and I'm looking forward to seeing if they do expand upon it or how they round it up if they do. But yeah, I'd say 6 just as a personal one for me.
Okay, Ewan.
Yeah, it'd be 7 from me. I feel like there were lots of things I enjoyed. But as you were saying, Jess, it was sort of with the sort of with the sort of tropey angle and stuff like that, you can kind of predict where it was all going. You can predict the action set pieces, which is again part of this film's strength, is that the action set pieces are done very well as well. But yeah, I could kind of predict what was going to happen, and
Oh yeah,
the
very
asset,
predictable.
and the only asset I think is, well, Cillian Murphy, but also Millicent Simmons, who I think I mean, not only a great hero, but just a great actor. And I think she will go on to do really, really good stuff. And
Can she talk in real life? 'Cause
well, she can.
my
she can
sister's
communicate in that way.
profoundly deaf, so she can't talk at all. But she
Right,
makes
yeah.
sounds, obviously, but she's never ever heard anyone
Yeah, well, I think
talk, so-
well, I think Melissa. I'm not sure what you call it. It's just sort of that version of talking, I guess. But it's but she's great, and I think she'll go on to do great things. But yeah, the rest of the film I wasn't completely sold on, which is strange because I actually enjoyed it the first time. I think the second time, because I knew everything that was coming, nothing was like a surprise anymore, and the stuff which was there kind of without the surprise is left with not much. So it's kind of so I was ambivalent second time. So yeah, 7 for me.
Okay, it's about that time then. So that's about 7 overall, really, isn't it? That's not too bad. So let's move on to Dan's hot pick.
Every time. Every time.
Oh, Dan's hot pick this week: KOKO-DI KOKO-DA from 2019. Now, an interesting film. I purchased it because I was struggling to get hold of it, actually. So I bought it. And how would I explain this? Jess is playing the trailer. So we've got a trailer on at the moment. So, a case of the shits derails a family holiday and forever alters the course of their lives. Years later, the couple go camping again, looking for one last chance to go back to the way things used to be. So there's my a log line or whatever you want to call it. This film. Now, I wasn't sure what they ate at the beginning. It's a Swedish film, I think, isn't it? I think Dan could tell us more. I'm pretty sure it's Swedish.
Yeah, I think it's Swedish.
And what I really liked about it is that everyone wears white underpants. So that was quite interesting. That
that is the most surreal thing about this film.
Yeah. So everyone wears white underpants. This must be a very Swedish thing, I would have thought. So they're at some kind of fair, aren't they? And they all eat something. And I think the mum's very ill, isn't she?
Yeah.
The daughter actually passes away. So 3 years later, they decide they just go on a bit of a road trip, don't they? I don't know where they're going, but it's late at night. And they decide to camp out that night when she wanted to go to a hotel. And anyway, they set up tent in the middle of the night. She's dying for a piss. Goes out for a piss and comes across, I think, a woman, a weird looking guy, a guy in a white suit singing KOKO-DI or something, the song. I don't know. Is that a Swedish song, Dan? I really don't know. One of those. I think it's a proper song. and the guy's carrying a dead Staffordshire Bull Terrier or something along those lines, and then there's one that's alive, and basically, I think they both get killed by these people, and then they wake up again in the tent, and she's dying for a piss again, and she wants to go outside for a piss, and they try and he tries. I think after a couple of tries to change what's going on. So
yeah, so he's always waking up in the same place, almost
she
like
needs a piss.
Yeah, almost like Final Destination, where it's like he experiences one way of going about it, and almost all of the ways he ends up being caught by these three people in the forest. And then once the people catch him, it's almost like a game over moment in a game, and then once it's game over, you restart to the last checkpoint. And for this film, the checkpoint is the guy waking up and his wife needing a piss, and it's kind of him trying to play out each scenario and trying to figure out how to. It's almost like a puzzle in some ways, to try and avoid these three. They're almost like in like house invaders in some ways, but it's like they're tent invaders. They're just
tent invaders.
Like,
yeah, definitely. And why is it daylight when they got a torch out or something and it's daylight in some of the scenes? I don't get that.
Well, it's quite curious how sort of like days and nights work, and even seasons. I mean, there's a moment where I think 3/4 of the way through where the woman suddenly exits the tent and it's layered under in snow. So it's kind of that uncertain environment that's kind of always shifting. And I think it comes from when the daughter at the beginning it takes an interest in this sort of music box thing.
Yes,
that sort of like spins in it has like a sort of tapestry or painting of these three characters on there, and I think the implication is that once you like activate it, it sort of activates the monsters, but apparently it's 3 years in advance or something like that. But I actually really enjoyed this film. I think it's sort of
it's amazing.
I think when I watched it, I was like in a state of like. We'll get onto this later, but I think the day before I'd watched Fantastic Beasts, the third one, and I was in a state afterwards of going, oh my god, I was just in a state of sort of Hollywood hatred. I was just in a sort of state where I was just like, I hate Hollywood now. They've ruined everything, and everything's so formulaic and horrible. I hate it. And it was sort of like when I put on KOKO-DI KOKO-DA, it's just like every rule's being broken, and it's like so sort of like the writer and director was just like, I don't care about making clear any of this film. It's just going to be completely from my head, and there's like puppetry, there's weird characters, had a sort of weird sort of League of Gentlemen vibe at times. You know, the sort of especially at the beginning where these two really weird eccentric characters suddenly enter this restaurant. But it's such a great opening as well, where it's like where the mum ends up in hospital because she had like the shits, as you said, from eating shellfish or something. And
the shits. The shits.
And it was their daughter's birthday the morning after, and it's this really long scene, and I think it's like done in one shot, where it's just like it's really really basic angle as well, where it just like, and then it gets to this point where the parents are singing happy birthday to their child who they presume is sleeping in the bed next to his mum, and it just transpires that she's died. And it's such a I love those. I mean, it's like it's almost like a key part of like sort of screenwriting rules, is that you change the emotional state from the beginning of the scene to the closing of the scene. And I really like when films take that to such a drastic level. So with this, it's like, happy, it's our daughter's birthday. Oh, she's dead. And it's such a sort of excellent endpoint. And then it goes off 3 years later into this really weird kind of recurring spiral of this guy waking up at always the same point with these three sort of like sort of weird sort of folkloric characters trying to sort of terrorize them, and then it goes off into this weird like puppetry situation.
That's a Swedish thing, I think. Like we have
really?
Punch and Judy,
and it was sort of
they have rabbits.
Yeah, and sort of shadow play and stuff like that. And it was
Yeah.
kind of, I think that's very Lynchian as well, especially with like the red curtain. I think that's red curtain is very Lynch. So it's sort of like, and there was also like David Lynch's Rabbits, where it's just humanoid figures but with rabbit heads. So I think that's very similar to that. But also the parents and the children were sort of dressed, well, not dressed up, but sort of they had like makeup on, which made them look like rabbits. So I think in a way it's a kind, I think it's probably like, I don't know, some sort of classic folklore tale that he's telling. I don't know, but they sort of try and connect it to that, I think, maybe. Dan's just commented, Ewan grows on you. He knew about KOKO-DI KOKO-DA and he has watched it. Well, I'm glad you like me now, Dan.
Dan, can you just let us know how many boners you give it, to be honest? Yeah. It'd be nice to know your thoughts on it, because I know you hadn't seen it. I know you recommended it, but I don't think you'd seen it before. I'll be watching it again soon, I think. So
it's one of those films that you can rewatch, and I think you can find something each time.
So what I got, and I'll put it on Twitter, like straight away, I was like, if you need a piss yourself, because like it's. That seemed to be the way that worked, because they, right, let's get in the car. Let's not muck about. Piss yourself in the car and let's go. That seemed to work the most. So at the end of the film, I don't know.
It reminded me
escape the loop. Or not?
Well, that's the interesting thing. It reminded me a bit of the end of The Mist. There's the Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah.
Where they're going. Where they escape the supermarket and they're driving through the mist, and they can't get to the end of it. I feel like this is sort of like an infinite forest situation, like, and they can't escape whatever fate.
So are they being punished like Triangle? We go back to our episode 1 and whatever, Triangle, where you're going around in loops and it's forever, and it's got something to do with some gods or something. Apparently, is that right? I don't know. So it's like a how? It's like a
Well, I think
how.
Well, I think in some ways it's kind of like we were talking about this in Drag Me to Hell, where it's that kind of punishment for not much at all, which I think actually works better here than it did. But you sort of, interestingly, with the sort of flashing back and forth when they're camping, you also get little pieces of the couple's situation, and it's usually that the guy isn't especially nice. He's not terrible, but he's not an especially nice guy. And I think maybe it's kind of almost suggesting that it's kind of punishment for his behavior. But then she's not dealt very well as well either. So it's sort of,
I didn't trust him as soon as I saw his white pants. That I was like,
because also he spent like the first few times of the camping situation just sort of leaving without her.
Yeah, I'm off.
I'm kind of.
That didn't work. Yeah. Right, I'll take it with me this time. Will that work? I enjoyed it. Jess, you need to watch it.
Sure.
I think you'd enjoy it. Actually, it's different. It's very different. Well, there's a lot of people pissing themselves, but like
that's the film's underlying message.
That's the thing. Every time it re-loops, he wakes up and she's like, "I need a piss," but that's how it starts. And he's going, "Nah, Dad, just do it in a saucepan or something like that." That's what he said. One of the first things he said, "Do it in a saucepan." Why you couldn't go outside? No, she does start outside, and then she gets.
Yeah. So, and there's the white cat. There's the white cat.
There's a white cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. So I would give that 8. To be honest, I like that. I liked it a lot. I was well engaged. Kept me laughing.
Yeah.
It's a good, interesting film, and I'm so glad I bought it. So yeah, I'll be on that again. I don't know why it's an 18 though.
Yeah, that confused me.
I think it's like, I don't know, maybe like
what
it's some things
like
I don't know.
Herself?
Well,
I don't know.
Might be just like I don't know, maybe like
it's just too weird. It's too weird for the censors.
The dogs in the maybe the dog being set in the tent on them. I don't know. Maybe just the thought of it. Anyway, what was the point of the dead dog? Why was he carrying a dead dog?
Well, that was the thing that sort of happened like towards the end of it, where they sort of the white dog runs out, and runs out into the road, and the couple run it over, and
Oh,
that's
so
a
now
kind
it's
of
looping from there.
it's
Maybe
looping
that's the
back
start.
again. Yeah, so it's a very interesting timey-wimey situation, and it doesn't explain it, and I actually really appreciate that. It's funny saying that after we sort of say Quiet Place 2 for not saying like, you know, about the world and stuff. But I think because KOKO-DI KOKO-DA is specifically art house and specifically meant to be surreal, and you get that from the beginning, I think it works better in this situation. I mean, that's why I'd give it an 8, because it was just sort of, it was so different, so interesting, and you didn't know what was going to happen. And I think I think we need to value these kinds of films.
Right, so let's move on to what we watched this week.
What have you been watching?
No, seriously, what have you been watching?
Who wants to start this week? I've watched quite a bit, actually. We do one each, yeah? So I watched the Spiral from the Book of Saw. Now, I looked at Rotten Tomato score on it, and it was 37%. So I spoke to my dad about this film, and he goes, yeah, it's good, Kev. You need to watch this. I'm not so sure. There are scenes. I don't like the torture stuff at all. I like horror movies, but really, when people, there's a scene where a mate is getting his fingers ripped off. Yeah, you all seen Saw? Yeah,
yeah. I think so. I haven't seen Spiral.
So in this Spiral, there is a scene where there's some guys like in a kind of bar thing, and his fingers are like connected to these like. There was a place I used to work for, and they used to sell these Chinese things that you'd stick your fingers in, and you couldn't get your finger out.
Yeah, finger traps.
What I mean?
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. So he's got finger traps, metal ones, on all his fingers, and he's wired up, and this thing's winding his fingers in. So if the water gets too high, it's going to electrocute him with this bit of copper that's hanging there. And it's ripping his fingers off. He rips his fingers off, and he dies anyway. So like. It was quite brutal. I liked Chris Rock in it. And Samuel L. Jackson's in it as well. I would give it a bit higher than 37%. But it's... I don't know. I just don't like... You wouldn't. All right, that's fine now. But
I thought you said you don't like Ewan. I was like...
No, it's Larry. Sorry. I love you. But Larry, so... I don't know. I didn't get this. It didn't make sense to me at the end at all. And this guy wandering around, it was a bit of a. It started okay, and then it just seemed to be all crammed together at the end to make it work. Like Saw normally is, everything comes together at the end. Oh, there was the big, twist. It was him, blah blah blah, with a pig's head or whatever. But yeah, it was all right. And the reason I watched it, obviously, because we are a very current podcast. And Chris Rock was in it, and we did I Am Legend last week, and I wanted to do Spiral last week, but I couldn't squeeze it in. So it was all right. It was all right. I don't think they should make another one at all. So, Larry, what did you think of it? Did you think it was a pile of horse shit?
I just don't really understand why they took the story in that direction. Like when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be quite interesting. Like it's going to be a film that can expand on what's come before and maybe make it different, maybe like explore different terrain. And it, the practical effects are good, but the story's all over the place. The new Jigsaw, without spoiling it, is just not intimidating, and it's just really a horrible twist at the end for me personally, where you're just like, you can see it coming, I think, as well. It's very obvious because the tone of pitch of the voice is just like, that can fit only one person in here. It's like, and it's you.
I worked that out. Like for me to work something out like that, it's got to be obvious. And I was like, it's got to be him.
Well, yeah, it's just when he plays his voice.
Through. Yeah.
It's just it wasn't satisfying for me personally. I just kind of think they need to leave it now because they keep trying to do it where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to explore, more about this world, and it's like, well, I think we know what's going on. Like,
my wife, right, when in our younger days, I don't know when Saw came out, but I always go to see horrors, and I've taken her to see a few. She refuses to go to any more horror films after I took her to see Saw. Because what I said, so I took her to see Saw, and I said I don't really know much about it because I hate reading up about stuff before I go and watch it. So we went to see Saw in the 2000s. You know, whenever it came out at the cinema, and it was kind of quite gritty, isn't it? It's felt quite cheap in a way. And that was it. She didn't like it at all for some reason. And that was the last horror film. So now I go on my own.
It's like 20 years.
Well, yeah. So anything that's 18, I've had to go on my own. Or like, there are films I've gone, which I felt really bad about. Because I said to my dad, I've got this horror film, you know, I liked Conjuring 2. So come and see it with me. So we go and see The Nun. And I don't mind The Nun, really. But my dad was like, it was all right, Kev. But he was just trying to say it was a load of old bollocks, really. But yeah, so like, Jess, you have to come to cinema with me, I'm afraid. Until Ollie's 18. Yeah, so do you want to pick something, Larry?
Tenant, best film, 10 out of 10.
So the thing
Watch
with
that again.
why would I not like that particularly? Do you think, Larry? I ain't got a fucking clue what's going on. Yeah, so
I love this film.
So
I watched it
everything's
recently.
backwards and
Showed
forwards,
it
and
Yeah.
things are going backwards, and oh my god, bullets are coming out of people and going into people. What's all that about? Come on, explain. Look at him even now. We've got
Explain the whole film.
There's water. You know what the fuck's going on?
It's a concept of time travel that is very in real world. So meaning like they know that it's a bit science lesson, everyone. It's based on a different type of time travel, which is inversion. So instead of
There's
going
more than
in
one.
Instead of like going back into a time machine, which is very much, you know, fictional of like, there's a don't lie, it's
Right,
great.
It's
hilarious.
hilarious.
Don't worry. The thing is though, is that I do actually, the thing is that I do respect that people don't like it, and I fully get those reasons.
I don't know what's going on, Larry.
Yeah, it's one of
problem.
those. It's one of those films that I don't know. I don't really know.
It's got Batman in it.
Without sitting here and obviously explaining details, I think it's just one of those films that's meant to be. I think Christopher Nolan is a director who always tries to, you know, not one up his own films, but I just think that he has such a dedication and care to filmmaking that even if you don't, you know, like a certain one of his films, which I know everyone usually has one that they go like, oh, it's my least favorite. I still think there's something to get out of it. And I think he wanted to experiment with a concept where it was similarly, again, like to not over explain, but at the same time to just create, I don't know, just an enjoyable film. And I think that I do respect that it is a film that really
I like
has,
that scene.
it has a very convoluted premise, but I think it's one of those films that's required to have multiple viewings as well. Like I don't think it's a one and done and then you leave it and go, I think the point of the whole film is that it can be watched multiple because it's obviously a temporal pincer movement.
For me, it would be Larry explaining what's going on after I've watched it.
Join
commentary
on it. I was going to join in next weekend where I explain Tenet.
Can you do that for me?
What the whole
just
the whole film.
The whole 15-hour movie or whatever it is.
Thing is, don't tempt me because I will, and I'll just do it for my I'd
watch it. I'd watch it, Harry.
But that's the interesting thing about this film is that I'm one of the people who didn't like it that much. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine, I guess. But I think the reason you should watch this film is because of the technical aspects, I think, more than the narrative aspects, because I think the technical aspects are really, really good, and it's classic Nolan, just pushing the boat out again, like, you know, completely changing how we think about how certain action scenes should be done. I mean, he does, like, you know, drive a whole plane into a fucking set, you know. So it's I think you should watch it just for that. I have watched the film twice, and I have to say I still don't understand what's going on.
Commentary coming soon.
Yeah, but it is worth watching. I remember Lawrence and I had like loads of discussions about it, like after it
we
came
had
out, and I
we
just
had a
didn't.
very very big long discussion over video, and it was literally just like two completely opposite ends of the spectrum of that film. Like, I love this bit, oh, that fucking bit.
Yeah, exactly.
All I would say is, like, if you didn't go to university, I wouldn't watch it.
No
can't
matter
get
what
my-
you went to university, don't
Well, I
see
went
it.
to university. I still don't understand what's going on.
You don't understand. That amazes me. I reckon you understand more than I do, Ewan.
Well, keep in mind, Lawrence, and I think a lot of people who really enjoy this film are really into the that sort of science. So,
Yeah.
like that sort of quantum physics and
Is
all
that an
that
actual
stuff.
thing?
Yeah. Or at least
Doesn't.
it's heavily based in scientific.
You
theory,
can't, yeah. The particle theory is the correct part, but you can't actually invert yourself and go back in time.
But for those of us who aren't into that, it's kind of difficult to sort of get into, and that's why and it's interesting because I still appreciate what Nolan did, because Nolan doesn't simplify it like a lot, pretty much every other time travel movie does, and I do like the fact that he's done that. But the fact is that I sat there not knowing what the hell was going on and just
me
seeing lots
too.
of explosions and stuff.
If he had just thrown Batman into a DeLorean or something at some point, I'd have been quite
It's
happy.
midway through the film.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
got, it all
I'm
makes
vengeance.
sense now. Do you know what I mean? I'm vengeance. Right. So, Jess, have you watched anything this week?
I've been going for anything that's easy and doesn't require brain energy.
You didn't
So-
watch Tenet then? No.
No. Mm-mm. So I've been watching The Walking Dead's been out every week, so
Yeah.
I've been watching that every Monday. Actually been enjoying the last few episodes. They feel a lot better than the ones previously. The writing's better. Like, it doesn't feel so scripted. But yeah, that's all I've really been watching.
Now you've got Now TV for a week. I think you should watch *Malignant*, and then we can talk about it next week, because I really like it, and I know these two don't.
Well, I haven't seen it, to be fair.
Oh.
but,
I did see
I
that pop
remember
up
we-
actually, because I was looking through the horrors.
Please watch it.
When did we last talk about that? I can't remember how.
It
many
must have been
podcasts.
when it
You
came out,
slated
like,
it ages ago.
I
actually
am
quite like
not
it.
a fan of that film.
I think you should watch it, Jess. I think you'd like it. Give it a go. It's all right. It's different.
definitely give it a go. It would be interesting to
Yeah.
see like what your opinions are of it. I just think that it's yeah.
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 You're in.
Did
We're on the
you say
hour
my
mark.
name?
Yeah, you're in. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've been really worried if you didn't. I mean, just
Yeah.
like me, it's my turn. So I'll just keep it to one. Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore.
This is
So
the one
this
with
is-
Johnny Depp in, yeah?
Not anymore. Not anymore. Johnny Depp stepped back from the series. It's been heavily implied it's because of the recent Amber Heard case that he's stepped away from the franchise. So he's replaced by Mads Mikkelsen, who's actually one of the redeeming qualities of this film.
Good. Yeah.
Mikkelsen, it's funny because even though Mikkelsen, I think in this film is sort of reining it in for some reason. I think he's
Hannibal
half-
Lecter.
Yeah, Hannibal
that's
Lecter,
Yeah.
the Sheaf, also the guy in Death Stranding, who's
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
But it's funny, even him at half his best is still amazing because it's Mads Mikkelsen and he can be intimidating, and he's pretty much the sort of the proto Voldemort antagonist of this series. There are a few good things about this film. So there's like a political angle around it, which is really on the nose but kind of entertaining. So Grindelwald, it's set in the 1930s, and Grindelwald, played by Mads Mikkelsen, has is sort of rigging the election at the 1930s. In 1930s Germany, in order to become the new chancellor. So I wonder what subtext that means. But someone's just commented to, "Hey Lawrence, are you legend?" Yes,
Thank
Lawrence is
you.
legend. And yeah, so Dumbledore is kind of. I mean, if people don't know the context of Dumbledore and Grindelwald, they were basically in love back in the day. And now they have this kind of hero nemesis situation. And the gang, which includes Newt Scamander, played by Eddie Redmayne, and a big bloke in a moustache, I can't remember his name, but they have to stop Grindelwald. But problem is that I was watching this film and trying my best to get into it, trying to get back into the nostalgia of Harry Potter, because that's what it is. It's the third in the prequel spin-offs of Harry Potter, and I was just watching it and I was just like, it's just Hollywood peddling the same messages with the same characters towards exactly the same audience, and it's just sort of event after event with sort of no clear direction of where it's going, and then it's sort of suddenly deciding, okay, this is what this is about now. And I was sort of pained by it. I found some bits quite funny. So there's a bit where Newt Scamander, who's like the magizoologist, he's in charge of like animals and stuff. He rescues his brother in a sort of subterranean sarlacc pit sort of situation, and he sort of like does this sort of dance move with a load of sort of scorpion things around. That's quite funny, and I enjoyed the scene. But again, I would love that if that was just like a YouTube video or like a really well-made YouTube video. Rest of the film, I was just like, I'm just sort of sad that, you know, this is what we've come to as a civilization. Is that it's just so sort of, it's the third film in a planned 5-film series. And
there's going to be more. I thought this was the finish.
No. So, and also 1 and 2. I mean, it's hilarious the sort of the critics' response on this, because a lot of people have been positive about this film, not overwhelmingly positive, sort of 3-star region, but it's sort of like a lot of people are just saying, well, yeah, it's great, it's better than the second one, and I'm just like, that's not a serviceable achievement. The second one was piss poor, and this is slightly better, but it's still not very good.
Who's writing them?
Well, it's J.K. Rowling and Steve Kloves, who also wrote a lot of the Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
And, you know, J.K. Rowling aside from her sort of like recent...
Are these in paperback, these?
No, that's
just,
another problem. That's another problem, is that there's no original source text.
Okay.
Aside from the 40-page thing she wrote for Comic Relief called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I think
that somewhere.
And I think that's also part of the problem, is that it's 5 movies based on no original premise. Not even like the Hobbit movie. I know a lot of people hate the Hobbit movies. I like them more than most people, but at least the Hobbit.
I also like them.
Okay,
I like them.
Good. At least we're united in that.
I'm good.
Yeah. But at least the Hobbit has, first of all, it has the 300-page source text, but it also has the sort of, you know, the mountains of appendices which J.R.R. Tolkien wrote for it. And so even though it may have been slightly too long, but they've been able to like justify it in a strange way. With Fantastic Beasts, they can't really do that, because it just seems like they're making it up as they go along, and that's what really, really annoys me. Because the Harry Potter, you at least had scope, and even though they started making the films like 4 books in, they still had an idea of where it was going, and they had a thick sort of history. But with here, they're just going in blind, and it's so I know it's the same case with every Hollywood movie, that they're making films to make money, basically, and there are lots of films out there which are intended to make money and that I really love. I mean, Lord of the Rings is the most obvious example. One of my favorite movies of all time. But with this, it's so transparent that they're just trying to make money, and the storytelling is just it suffers because of that. And it just and even though I'm not as attached to the Harry Potter movies anymore, I have a sort of sentimental attachment because I sort of grew up with them. It's kind of like it kind of there were so many moments in this film where it's just like sort of Hogwarts nostalgia. We're going to show shots of Hogwarts, and inside, oh look, it's Hogsmeade. Oh look, it's the books that nearly ate Harry up in Prisoner of Azkaban. Oh look, that's a great callback. And then they play, you know, the classic music to try and make the sort of, you know, the Harry Potter fans cry or whatever. But it's just so cheap, and it's so unimaginative, and it annoys me, and that's all I have to say about it.
I haven't watched the second one. I did buy it on YouTube, I think. But yeah, I've got all the Harry Potters on there, but the kids have never watched it, so probably won't bother for a while. So I have watched this week The Box.
Is that Richard Kelly?
It's the one with the woman. What's her name?
Diaz.
Cameron Diaz. Yes.
The person who made Donnie Darko, right?
Yes.
Who made this one. Yeah.
So basically, $1 million in dollars in cash if you press a button. That button means that someone you don't know dies. What a strange film. You've all seen it, have you?
I haven't seen it. No.
I'm not going to
Yes.
give this twist away then, because there's no point. You might as well. There is a twist. I don't mind it. It literally did about, I think, 43% Rotten Tomatoes. I'd give it a bit higher. She's got a really weird accent. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. So she decides to press the button, and because she presses it, someone somewhere dies. Well, does she? Yeah, she does press it. And they try to give the money back, so they're not happy about it. And that's it. I can't give any more away really, because it will totally ruin the film. Yeah, you've seen it, Larry.
Yeah.
What
actually-
else can I say? Really, it is good. It does have a feel of Donnie Darko at times.
I think it is. Yeah, it's
not on that
definitely-
level though.
No, it's enjoyable, and I think the first time you watch it, I think it's good to go in not knowing anything, because you can be like, "Oh, what's the twist?" But I think once you've seen it, I think, I don't know, it could be. I think the premise could have had some more, oomph to it. But I do think it's a solid film.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 6.
Yeah.
The only I bought I buy DVDs and Blu-rays all the time, and I bought a mystery box of horror, and that was in there. I think it says PG-13 there. I had it on Blu-ray. Thought, well, I'll watch it for the podcast. Yeah, it was all right. But I can't say too much because it will totally give it away. The other thing I watched, Night's End on Shudder. I watched. What do I say about this? It's kind of one of those Zoom films again. Yeah, I said like you could, for anyone watching this, you can see it's like filmed like a film, but there was a lot of him communicating with people via his laptop and things. With his ex-wife, I think, and her guy and his mate. He seems to be a bit, I don't know what's wrong with him, where he's anxious or whatever, and he's had a drinking problem, and he lives on his own now, and his hobby is stuffing dead birds. So he's doing his own YouTube kind of channel about, I think it's about business and things. And on one of his kind of streams, one of these birds that are on a shelf falls off. So there's the premise that, oh, that bird fell off your shelf, so your house must be haunted. And it goes from there. So he talks to someone who's got their own channel who deals with hauntings and things like that. And it gradually, this movie gets worse and worse. And then at the end, there's people with fucking yellow eyes, and it gets weird, and it's, oh mate, it started so well and finished so poorly. You need to watch, because I'm totally going to give it away, but yeah, the yellow eyes, it's just fucking horrendous in the end. I was watching it thinking, yeah, I'd had like 2 or 3 beers and think, yeah, this is all right, it's going along, one of those Zoom movies again. But it just, the last 20 minutes, it's just ridiculous. Have you seen it, Larry? You seen it? Yeah.
No.
And I like Shudder a lot, but they have some decent films on there. But this one, yeah, it just doesn't make sense, most of it. Oh, a bird fell off my shelf. Your house must be haunted. It's not. It's like me doing this now, right? And my dartboard falls down, right? You can see it just behind me, right? Oh, your house is haunted. No, the dartboard fell off the fucking wall. That's what happened.
Solid.
Anyway, so I watched that, and I would give that a 3 because it kept me engaged for half of it, and then it went tits up. The other thing I watched, we got sent there's a couple of films I like called Hex and The Droving on Rubicon Films, and I got sent a screener the other day, and it was for a kind of supernatural folk thing about haunted forest. So it's called Side World Haunted Forests of England. Now, it's kind of more imagery, and then someone talking about what happened over the last couple of 100 years, or maybe even longer, in forests. One of them being Cannock Chase, which is in the Midlands, I think. And then there was one about Epping Forest. It was just stories about that and people who have committed suicide and things like that. I'd probably prefer it as a podcast. There's just a lot of images and just people chatting. So there's no actual, it's like a documentary thing.
Epping Forest. That's not the one in the UK, is it?
Yes, it's all in the UK there. So Epping Forest has got quite a few lakes that are, or ponds or whatever you want to call them, that are meant to be haunted.
Is Epping Forest the one that we went to in uni?
I feel it rings a bell with me as well, Lawrence.
Yeah.
So there must be some.
You know, but this is the thing. This is probably going to sound stupid to people who obviously don't know this previous story of this. But long story short, if Epping Forest is the forest that we went to and it's haunted, then that's creepy in such a weird way, because without even knowing half those stories, there was such an odd feeling there. Not like I wouldn't say ghosts, but it was just like an odd feeling of like, no, fuck this forest.
So Epping Forest seems to be like Chelmsford way. So you know where Chelmsford is. I know where Chelmsford is. So
I don't think we go that far. Maybe it just sounds similar.
So you go past Dartford and that up that way. Let's go past it all the time. It was okay.
Maybe not then.
The imagery was good. Obviously, the guy who's filming it, he knows his stuff. There's some lovely shots of the forests and the lakes and things like that. And there's some good running commentary. But it's more of a kind of documentary. And I love the driving. So he did that. So I enjoyed it. But it would have been a great podcast to listen to about these stories. Some of it was about Dick Turpin. I think he was at Epping Forest. He may have even been a lot of his crimes were there. You know who Dick Turpin is?
I've heard the name. I haven't.
I only know Dick Turpin because when I was growing up, Adam Ant had a song called Stand and Deliver. And I think he dressed as Dick Turpin. And he used to just rob people at night. You know, people travelling on their horse and carriage. And he'd hold them up. Money all your life, basically. So that's the only reason I know who he is.
Not the bloke from Adam Ant.
Yeah, no, I was going to say.
Adam Ant.
That's what I was thinking. Like, wait,
Adam
he
Ant
dressed up as him.
Adam Ant had a song called "Stand and Deliver," and he quite often dressed like that. And if you ever want to watch the Stand and Deliver video, that's all you need to know. So that's pretty much all I watched this week. Anyone got anything else, Larry?
Just Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I know we've discussed it before. Very good film. Was cool to rewatch it again. I always forget how good that film is. I know it never. The time doesn't ever feel as long as it is. It's a very long film, and I think that obviously, if you know what it's like, the true story based on with Sharon Tate, and then obviously Quentin Tarantino, obviously very good writer, just knows how to take something like real world and mix it with almost his imagination of these characters, and I just think they're great. The acting's really good. I will agree. I've had this criticism a lot, and I do agree with it. Watching it again, I just think the Bruce Lee scene is the only scene in this film which I would almost rework it.
Doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, it's like the rest of the film is good. I know what they're trying to say, and I've had this conversation a lot, which is like they're trying to say, oh, Brad Pitt is, as matched or better than the famous Bruce Lee, and that's fine. But the problem is it comes across very like, I didn't really like this person, and I don't know if that's the case, but that's what it comes across as. It's just that one scene, but yeah, I really like it. It is great, and I think obviously if you've seen it, I think the ending just wraps everything up with a very nice bow.
Yeah, I mean, I did like that, and I like the whole Sharon Tate storyline and how they tackle that. But I just I'm someone who didn't like it as much as everyone else.
Oh,
I'd probably
okay.
give it 3 stars or 6 boners or whatever. But I don't know. It's another one of those films where it just feels like it's having a very long nostalgic wank where it's just sort of and it's like typical of a sort of Oscar nominated movies, especially where it's just Hollywood wanting to sort of like have pleasure with itself, and it's just sort of I don't know. I you know, it's well written, and you know, I like Tarantino, but I don't know. I much prefer I prefer it when Tarantino is his usual self. I know,
Yeah, no,
and
no,
I know, I like it when directors experiment. I like it when they go out of what they usually outside of what they usually do. But I don't know. I didn't get what I wanted out of it, I guess. But yeah, that's my view on it.
Nice.
Wow. So that's kind of wrapped up, really. Dan's hot pick next week. He has put Rigor Mortis from 2013. I'm not
Heard
sure
of
if
it.
he's actually watched it. I don't know if I've got to buy it. I don't know. But this week's, I think, was the best Dan's hot pick for me. And I like Mutant Blast a lot. And I've liked all of them, actually, to be honest. But I really like this one. It was different. But yeah, I thought he'd watched it, to be honest. So, you know, what other Swedish horror is there out there for us? Is Rigor Mortis a Swedish horror? I don't know. But anyway, next week, are we okay revisiting Evil Dead?
Yep.
The
remake.
remake, yeah.
So we got the remake from what was that? That's 2013 as well. Now we did do it on the podcast, and I was with some guys who don't really like horror, and it'd be nice to hear your thoughts on it because it is a favorite. It's probably the best remake ever made. I personally think, and I don't know if it's a reboot or it's just a reimagining.
I think it's basically a reimagining.
Yeah. And I know we're getting a new Evil Dead soon, aren't we? We're certainly getting a game soon anyway.
I can't wait for the premise of it sounds amazing. In a building, trapped in like an apartment block, and then all of it happens there, and it's like levels to it. So I think they could do like what they did with Dread and what they did with the Raid, but obviously for a horror.
Is this the film?
Well, I believe so. Like
Yeah.
the premise is that it's about a woman like looking after her kids, or it's looking after someone else's kids, and then everything kicks off Evil Dead style. So I'm interested to see. I want it has to be an 18. I don't want them to put it in somewhere they're like, oh yeah, 15. You know, let's calm out. It's like, nah, Evil Dead that's the point.
Evil Dead is brutal. The remake,
Yeah.
at times, it's. Well, I just love it. It's in my
Are we
collection.
doing the extended cut?
Do whatever cut you like. I don't know if I've got an extended cut. I've got on Blu-ray.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's extended or not. I don't know.
Yeah, because there were three
know.
different endings, and then there was a copy. There was a copy that was put onto E4. Yeah, do you not like it?
Well, no, I'm fine with it, but it just reminds me of uni because it's like it's funny because you talk to people often about favorite films and so on, and often there's like you get the usual ones because I think yours is like Jurassic Park, The Thing, quite usual ones, and then there's often one, and it comes with everyone where it's just completely out of the gate, just no idea, and I feel like for you that's the Evil Dead remake, so I feel like you talked about it a lot, and I was like, why?
I own that film quite a lot as well because I bought it first time and then tried to find the one with the extended like 24 minutes in it that they only showed on E4 once, and I was like, you bastard. Yeah, I know, and it was a special event for it. It was like E4 on at 9 extended, and I missed it and I was heartbroken, but then luckily I found it online.
I need to watch that, but I might watch the first Evil Dead as well, the original. So go for it this week. Okay. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's the Bones Horror Pod. Instagram's the same. If you want to email us, it's the boneshorrorpod@gmail.com. So we'll be back next week with our episode 77. Evil Dead remake 2013, reimagining, whatever it is. All right. So thanks for listening and watching, and we will see you next week. Oh no, right, hang on, just wait a sec. Got to find me outro. So I'll see you next week, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.